to the farm and pick. So, you know, it's not a big risk for a farm like mine to try these apples. But if I was a wholesale operation selling to a grocery store or the warehouse, you know, these are a lot more risky and you wouldn't take that chance unless it was a proven variety. Because it takes time, you know, you plant a tree, we planted these trees, what's the year it says on there? I think it was last year, right?
2022.
20, so we planted these last spring, 2 springs ago.
Wow.
And we'll get our first decent crop off of them next year. So you've already invested 3 years into the trees, and then you don't even know by then if the apples are good or not. So you like to know before you plant. Production? Yeah. Year 5, 6, 7, something like that. You start getting a decent amount of apples back.
Do they only get better with how old they are? Or is there
As far as product, no, the apples are the same, but they'll produce more per acre. So here's a good contrast. The trees per acre here is a lot higher than the trees per acre over here. All right. So being from the Midwest, you know, farmers out there live their lives on a per acre basis or per hectare or section because it's bigger, right? Costs per acre, revenue per acre. You know, same is true here, much smaller scale. Costs a lot more to plant this acre because the trees cost the same, whether they're planted 800 trees per the acre or 300 trees per the acre, right? Still costs $10 a tree. But we're going to get our productivity is going to hit peak production sooner in year 4, 5, 6. Whereas over there, it's going to take 10 or 11 or 12 to get peak production coming off that acre of ground, right? Because it takes longer to fill the space.
Is that because of the species of tree?
Because of the size of the tree and how many trees per acre there are. So they're on a smaller rootstock. Everybody see this little knuckle right here? All right, so an apple tree is a combination of 2 grafted together fruit trees. There's a root system underneath that's in the ground. That's a variety of apple grown for its rooting characteristics. The big predominant one here is that this root system is going to keep this tree small. And it's going to fit into this orchard spacing arrangement. So this variety is Baker's Delight or something, right?
Yeah.
If we put it on a larger rootstock, that Baker's Delight would grow to the size of those trees over there. Okay. So 2 different rootstocks in these 2 orchards, and the big difference is how big the tree gets. So I'd rather grow all of our fruit on smaller trees because they're easier to take care of.
Are they considered dwarf then?
I'm sorry?
Are they considered dwarf?
Yep, these are full dwarf trees.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're easier to take care of, and they do a more efficient job of harvesting sunlight. So there's on any acre of ground, there's free sunlight hitting that ground every day. And our job as a farmer is to capture that sunlight and turn it into something of value. Whether we're growing corn and soybean out in the Midwest or we're growing apples here, this orchard is going to be more efficient at it than that orchard. And we're going to get a higher percentage of top quality apples out of a smaller tree than we are out of a larger tree. The larger tree has more shady parts of that tree, so you're going to get off-colored fruit. You know, the buds aren't as healthy, so on and so forth. This tree is only going to have, once it's full grown, is going to have a shady spot right down here, but 90% of it is going to have nice, good light interception. And it's a heck of a lot easier to prune these trees. So we prune all these trees every year. So these are easier to prune than those.
Why do you paint them white?
That's a just conversation piece for the most part. I don't know. Makes it look like we know what we're doing. No, there's it protects the trunks of the tree against herbicide damage. Because you notice there's no weeds grow or grass.
Yeah.
There's a pretty distinct line here where we come along with a sprayer and we spray a herbicide, and it's hitting the trunks of the tree as we go by. So that helps protect the tree from that. A little bit of insects. It deters insects from boring in.
Yeah.
There's certain insects that lay their egg on the bark, the eggs hatch, and the larvae tunnel into the tree. So that deters that a little bit. The big
happened to our tree. It's real sad right now. That exact reason.
cut borers.
Borers.
You see their little piles of sawdust on the ground? Yeah.
That's your trunk.
You root it around in that trunk, you'd find a little wiggly thing in there.
Should I get it out?
Yeah, get it out, squish it.
Okay.
Pulling
I didn't
out
know
tweezers.
Chickens.
Okay, I'm doing it. Do they ever age
out, like they get old and you just cut it down and plant a new one, or about how long, like?
Well, so like an orchard like that, we could easily get 30 or 40 years out of it if you wanted. These might have a shorter lifespan. Okay, so.
Do you
but
do it whole, like this whole row is gonna go and then we'll plant a new one, or do you
And then
do it bit by bit?
We'll take the whole orchard out.
Wow.
Sometimes I do it by rows because we're a small pick your own fruit farm where we can kind of get away with that kind of stuff. Where we don't really have to think about productive efficiency as much as a wholesale grower does. You know, like I'll remove one row. If I've got a variety that's a dud, like Baker's Delight, you know, I'm not going to find out if this variety's worth anything until next year.
Yeah.
So we're already 3 years into this orchard's life, right? And it's like, oh, this variety is terrible. So what do? You know, so we either take those trees out and plant new ones, or we can graft them over to a new variety, which is a process of you take a cutting, like you take off this limb from the variety you want, cut the tree, and you graft it in. I'm not very good at it. I'm getting better, but I haven't been successful yet. And you can create a new tree on a new variety. So
My parents do that with their vineyard.
You get to taste them?
Oh yeah, grapes.
You go to
the
like
apples.
an apple growers convention.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, there's conventions and stuff where they'll see those. Yes. Certainly, if I was a wholesale grower making a large investment on a 5-acre orchard of some new varieties, I would want to do a lot of research on that and tasting, marketing research and all that, because it's a huge investment.
Yeah.
So do you just kind of experiment then on a smaller farm like this?
Yeah, yep. Sometimes I'll plant like 10
Yeah,
trees
sounds
of
fun.
some experimental varieties. Like this is, so this little orchard has 6 experimental varieties in it.
Wow.
And I've got 25, each row, the first 3 rows is 25 trees of 2 different varieties. So that's exactly what I did here with these. Just did 25 trees of 6 new varieties, new to us. We'll
What do
see
you
which
do with
ones.
all your mulch?
So the wood chips get spread underneath the blueberry bushes, and we're actually going to spread them under the apple trees this fall too. Yeah, it's a little bit of soil conservation practice. Actually, the federal government's going to pay us to spread those wood chips under the trees. It's part of the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Yeah. So they're just the USDA, the feds are just looking for ways to get money in the farmers' pockets and create these ways to make it happen.
What did you do before you bought this farm?
I was a fruit grower. Let me see. I grew up in Western New York, farm country out there, and everybody was an apple grower. And my parents and my sister are still farming there. And I went to school at UNH, and ended up after 7 years back home in New York. My wife and I decided we wanted to do something on our own, and we found this place for sale. So it's been great ever since.
You're doing a great job with it.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Do we still have time to walk?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that rain shower isn't going to happen. So.
Hopefully we take
Listen, I'm like wearing a coat every time I shoot my bag and I just get mad. I'm mad that it just sits in there. No, I'm going whale watching. I just don't think I'm going to be able to walk.
Every time I just thought, awesome.
Teaching I'd rather wear it and then have to take it off to not wear it.
These are baby snow sweet trees. Now this to me is a proven variety, but help yourself, guys. On the help.
I took a bite with the quick chicken. I can't do the whole apple. Oh gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, he said help yourself.
I'll do it.
So Snow Sweet was actually bred and created by the University of Minnesota. Someone here was from Minnesota. Yeah. So this is a golden gopher apple. That's their mascot, right?
There he goes. He's
Yeah.
dead.
Oh, this is actually a really sweet.
can get you on my air.
Good.
Because I really don't like eating that on that either. You don't like it on
Good. No. But I think you'll like it.
Now my husband gets a t-shirt.
Wow. Right. I like these. There's another one that we just started stocking the broker that's like no crisp or something else. It's got crisp in it, but I don't think it's this one.
Started renting that land right back in 2006 to 2007. It was all old apple orchards. So we completely ripped everything down that was there and replanted it to more efficient plantings and more diverse crops. There's peaches and blueberries and there's apples and more peaches. There's an apple orchard way down there that somebody just went to 50%. Yeah. Way down there. So, it's really fortunate that we had this land to grow onto when we first bought this place. It's a natural, it's easy to incorporate it into the farm. Cool. So,
Is that a bat house?
that kestrels,
Oh.
where we
Yeah.
never had one nest there. There's another one down there, but up on the upper part of the farm, we have one on a pole right next to our strawberry field. And we've had multiple families of kestrels nest up there. I think it's probably the same one. This year we had a nesting pair, and they raised 4 babies. It was so much fun to watch. The rodents. Oh yeah, and the fruit-eating birds. Those stinking cedar waxwings. My goodness, they just eat. They are voracious. Yeah, beautiful song, right? Yeah, but boy, the kestrels keep them away.
Nice.
They do a good job. Yeah.
Was that your corn we drove by?
No, there's a dairy right down the road. So they farm a lot of it. They do a lot of the open fields around here, the corn and all that.
How do you keep your fields like the fertility up? Do they fertility the soil?
Apples, yeah, we add nutrition back to the soil. Potassium is the big one. That every apple that leaves the farm takes a bunch of potassium with it, so we spread it on the ground. There's organic sources of potassium that we try to use. Lime, potash, magnesium, calcium. Those are the ones that, phosphorus are the ones that we're trying to add back for the most part. Nitrogen, on a healthy soil, you kind of get all the nitrogen you need just from the natural decomposition of organic. So, in my experience here, we don't need to add any nitrogen. A little bit here and there for certain varieties and things like that, but not a broadcast application.
Nothing to it.
Yeah.
Are any of your orchards organic?
Nope. That's a really challenging. It's not sustainable. I mean, we can really get down the rabbit hole here, but my elevator pitch on organics for fruit growing is it's not a sustainable solution because Mother Nature takes too much of your crop away. It ruins too much of it, makes it unmarketable. So now we're not running a business that's turning a profit anymore and creating jobs and keeping land in farming. You know, those farms are going out of business and they're selling off for house lots. So
That happens in my own backyard.
mhm.
The animals take it all, and then there's nothing left from me.
Right. Mother Nature always eats first.
Yeah.
We get what's left over.
Rude.
But we breed such giant varieties with such giant fruits that it can't keep up with itself. With these giant apples, you take those away and then there goes all your capacity.
Right. So that's why we just add it back. Right. Fertilizer. Right. So I don't know. Strawberries this is what a strawberry field looks like off season. Nice and green. My dad always told me if your strawberries look good in September and October, you're set up well for next year. So they look great right now.
We were just commenting on how beautiful those rows are.
So what?
I know, I'm like, that's what they're supposed to look like, but mine don't look like that.
All rad.
So what they're doing, again, we talked about capturing sunlight a little while ago, right? Strawberries, these leaves are all solar panels that are turning sunlight into sugar, and they're sending that sugar this time of year down into the crown of the plant, which is right down at the ground level. And all that sugar and resource is what's going to turn into fruit for next year. So you can see right down there, right at the soil level, these are the crowns right down here. And that's where the fruiting bodies are created, down in here. And early in the spring, the flowers are the first things that come up, and they open, and we'll put straw on these. So the process is, yes, all right, so the straw has multiple purposes. If you look close in the soil, here's some of last year's straw. All right, that's kind of just decomposing. Straw adds a lot of organic matter to the soil that breaks down. We also like to put a blanket on top of our plants for the wintertime. If there's a low snow year, snow is a great insulator, but in the absence of snow, if we had a deep freeze, it could damage those crowns we were just looking at and impact next year's fruitability. If that's a word. So we'll put, we've got equipment that we drive right down the row, and we grind up straw bales, and it drops the straw right on top of this row of plants. So it kind of as a blanket. And then in the spring, middle to the end of April, as soon as the ground dries out, we'll go along with another machine that rakes the straw off and puts that straw into the middle, which is where we want it for harvest. So the plants grow up through the residual straw in the spring, and we got a nice blanket of straw for our middles for making harvest a little cleaner and more comfy.
Clever.
So yeah, that's strawberries, and you see all these runners. Okay, these are all daughter plants. You see there's a root initial starting there. So it was connected to the mother plant, and it's trying to spread. Again, we are the fruit grower. We don't want to let this plant do what it wants to do. It wants to make more plants all over the place, hence these runners going everywhere. But for a productive fruit grower, we want to keep a nice narrow row that we're creating edges. We talked about the shady spot in the apple trees. In the center of these strawberry rows is a shady spot where productivity isn't as good as it is on the edge of the row, right? So we want to create a row of strawberries that's about 12 inches wide. So we have two 6-inch deep edges. That's where our productivity is the best. If we let the row get 2 feet wide, it all looks great, nice and green, but we lose productivity in the middle foot of that row. So we'll use equipment to cultivate these rows and not allow these runners to root and create new plants that make for a wider and wider. That's right. We'll probably run up and down these rows one more time before we put the straw on with the cultivator, just to make sure none of these little babies are gonna root and take hold and all that. But, we've already done it multiple times this year. So,
But it means you have a very healthy plant.
yeah, they're doing well. Really happy. We do use organic fertilizers in our strawberries. I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence where the strawberry plants get better with age. This field is coming into its 5th year. Next year will be its 5th, maybe its 6th year that we're harvesting fruit off these. And look at these plants. They're just robust, and oftentimes our older fields look better than our 1st or 2nd year fields. And I attribute that to the organic fertilizers that we're adding to the soil every year, where we're creating a more healthy soil. The plants are just going to get more and more healthy.
Are you doing like dairy do or like?
No, we're pelletized chicken coop stuff, or dairy manure that's dried and pelletized, and they mix a lot of ground up rock pieces in there and for your minerals, and I don't really know exactly what's going on with it all, but it seems to work.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
family does the fertilizing part.
Yeah, and that's the magic dust, right? A lot of it is you're adding the stable organic matter. So, okay, organic matter, okay? Roots, any part. We are organic matter, all right? We die, this plant dies, it goes into the soil. It's not stable yet. It's very active in the soil environment. It takes nutrients out of that soil to decompose this grass, right? So it actually is a draw on the soil to decompose this green manure, so to speak. But in the long run, it's a good thing, because once this has been all decomposed and kind of pooped out, for lack of a better word, by the soil biota, it's now stable organic matter. And that's stable humic matter. You might have heard those words before. That's the truly beneficial part to our soil that creates porosity and nutrient holding capabilities. That's the stable, ground up organic matter that it holds nutrition in the soil. Without it, it's just little bits of sand. But the more organic matter we can get to decompose in our soil and become stable, the better off our soils
Where
are.
would you like this organic
You
matter?
can throw it right in the strawberry field.
Make a wish.
Does that draw like worms too to aerate the soil?
Worms are great.
Yeah?
Worms are the soil's nature's tillage.
Yeah.
They're tiller. They tunnel, get air down deep. They turn, they eat, they travel somewhere, they poop it out over there. You know, it's great. So back there, you hear the chainsaw going. You guys see the mountain?
Yeah.
That's a mountain of rocks that we've created. So that used to be all woodlot right back there where the blueberries are, where the netting system is. That was a woodlot like 3 years ago. So we pushed back on that. We gained 5 acres that we cut out of the woods back here.
Wow.
And there was a tremendous amount of rocks. So the previous farmers, we already talked about them, they lived here. This soil they were farming was all good soil, but they didn't farm that soil back there. They let it go back to woods because it was very wet and it had a tremendous amount of rocks on it. But me being stubborn, I was like, well, we can control both of those things, right? We can drain the ground to get rid of the excess water, and we can move rocks. We need to get big enough equipment in to do it. We could afford to do that to create more usable land for this farm because we're a small scale retail New England farm where we're doing pick your own and all that. So
how do you control the moisture? Do you have it tiled?
exactly, you got a drainage system. So there's a lot of that in this soil up here. But we bury about 2 to 2.5 feet deep, 4-inch perforated plastic pipe.
Oh wow.
It's perforated so that water can weep into it. And if we install that pipe on a slope, the water flows into that pipe and then it starts flowing downhill. And if you guys notice the grade of the ground here, there's a natural slope going in that direction. So all we have to do is install the pipe a consistent 2 to 2.5 feet deep, and as soon as the water finds its way to it, it starts flowing in that direction. So those pipes all daylight in the woods down at the low ends of the farm, and the water flows out down there. And those tile drainage pipe only takes the excess water out of the soil. It doesn't take all the water out of the soil. So that humus matter, that holds on to the water better than our tile drainage pipe wants to pull it away. But if there's excess water that our soil organic matter can't hold on to anymore, then you get a waterlogged soil that doesn't have any air in it, and you can't have life in a waterlogged soil. So we got to get rid of that excess water. That's job one, to grow, have any type of a farm be healthy.
Are your
and
neighbors
productive.
annoyed that you're flooding their yards?
Yeah, stay into their basement, right?
No, there's good wetlands there and all that. It goes all right. We're not moving.
The rocks out.
What's that?
How did you sift the rocks
Just big equipment. Yep, and a lot of hand labor, like picking up the apples. The smaller rocks we do by hand, but the big ones, the first rocks that come off that land back there were as big as Volkswagens, right? So they were being hauled off the field one at a time. And if you guys have time, you should take a walk back there and walk up on top of that mountain. It's really impressive.
There's a boulder. And there's a boulder. That's
Let's start heading up this way.
There's a boulder.
On your right.